Hey guys, we're going to be doing something a little special this week. As today is July 20th, 2019, and I recently picked this kit up, a little bit of a shopping trip, and I thought more than anything today that would be appropriate on the 50th anniversary to the day of the Apollo 11 landing on the moon. We should review this guy. So we'll be looking at today Monogram's 1/48th scale First Lunar Landing kit. Let's open her on up and take a look. Now, one thing I will say out of the gate is this kit initially was first done in 1970. There's some identifying casting marks on the underside of the base part, which we'll get to in a minute, that include date stamp. So this kit is basically as old as the moon landing, having came out the following year. So, total 2 sprues and 1 main part. So we'll start with this first sprue, which does include a lot of the parts for the ascent stage. One thing I will say out of the gate that I do not like is the fact that they cast the ascent motor as 2 separate halves instead of as one singular part. Now, once you attach this to the descent stage, it's not going to be seen. However, it would have been nice had they done it as a separate piece so that you can clean it up, make it look nice in case you wanted to do, diorama type effect of it shooting off. Anyway, continuing on, obviously it's broken down on several pieces, including this main front area, which does include separate window pieces for the viewports. Fortunately, there's no internal detail, which would have been nice to have included. Do not know if anybody makes any type of aftermarket accessories for this kit. If someone does, please leave that in the comments. I'd like to know. Anyway, moving on. This sprue also has some of the various instruments and scientific experiments that they did at the landing site, as well as 2 astronaut figures. Casting is overall fair. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. Though, to be honest, they do seem a little overscale, at least to my eye. Then again, if you've actually seen the spacesuits, they are fairly bulky. So again, it could just be an optical thing and just how it looks to my eye. They do mold the backpacks as separate parts, which are up here. So that getting those on will present a little bit of a challenge, but nothing outside of the ordinary. Beyond that, we also get part for the flag, though I would say your best bet is to sand this down a little and thin it out, just to give it a little more realism. Moving on. Excuse me. This second sprue includes essentially all the parts for the descent stage, which thankfully they do cast the motor as a separate part and as a full bell assembly, so you don't have to deal with cleaning up any type of seams or whatnot. Overall, detail is passable. Some of the struts and whatnot are a little thick, and cutting these support pieces out is going to be a bear to get those out without breaking anything and then get them cleaned up. So that does present a bit of a challenge. However, nothing outrageous. One thing I will note is this kit does only include the necessary parts to do it as the Apollo 11 version. Obviously, with later missions, they include additional components, namely one most obvious being the rover. So it would have been nice if they included the parts so that you could do some of the later missions, but is what it is. Obviously, since this came out in 1970, they obviously wanted to rush it out to, meet the man that existed then. Now, moving on to our Diorama Base. The biggest issue I have with this thing is that they molded in the shadows. So you have this, and I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera, but as you see around all the various things, the flags, the science experiments, the lander, and as well as the figures, they have molded in sort of a depression outline of where the shadow would be, with the assumption you'll paint it black. What kills me is that, this is completely unrealistic to real life. I mean, yeah, they would cast a shadow, but they wouldn't leave an indentation. And to clean this up, it would be a nightmare. I mean, an absolute nightmare. You'd be better off dumping this and building your own moonscape. However, obviously it does include a lot of the positioning and all that, so it's a big setback in my eye. I wish they hadn't done it, and I have no idea how you'd go about cleaning that up in any way that would be remotely easy. Beyond this, it does provide a lot of interesting detail. Includes all the footprints, includes all the instrument placements, and allows them to be easily connected. And as I mentioned before, it does include date stamp. Yep, got that right side up, of 1970. So you can tell just how old this thing is. Lastly, we have our clear parts, which are these little punch-out sheet type things. Wish they had done it as a more traditional way, even though these are remarkably thin and properly scaled. Just, I worry that trying to punch them out, you're more than likely going to damage them, and you're kind of SOL at that point. Now, let me pop these parts back in, and then we'll move over to the instruction sheet. Oh, one last thing. We do get a decal sheet. Includes decals for the flag and various other markings to go on the limb. And interestingly, you're given this sheet of gold foil, as well as a cutout instructions for where it goes on the limb. Now, personally, I don't think I will use this, simply because while I will use, obviously, this guide, I don't think I will use this just in case. Since I only have one sheet of this, I'd rather use something like actual aluminum foil or something similar, so that, God forbid, I screw it up, I don't lose this. So moving on now to our instructions. Now, like most Revell kits, assembly is not overly complicated. However, obviously, with the inclusion of the foil, you're going to have to do that. Thankfully, they do give you instructions and which areas that need to be gold and which areas need to be painted black. Beyond that, assembly is very simple, very straightforward, no real sort of gotchas. So I don't see there being any difficulty in assembling this kit. It's very beginner friendly. Only issues obviously going to be working with that gold foiling and doing all the various proper marking and what have you. And obviously doing the moonscape upright might provide a bit of a challenge, but it's a reasonable challenge, So it's not like there isn't enough reference material you can use for that. So overall, this kit is long in the tooth. You can see a lot of the things that, in terms of design-wise, have long since passed. Some detailing could be a little better. But overall, despite its age, it still holds up pretty well. And at the end of the day, there really aren't that many, decent space kits around, at least in terms of current production. Now, obviously, this kit and several others have been produced for the 50th. Fortunately, at the time of this recording, this is the only one I've been able to acquire. So I'm hopeful to eventually get those, and we'll review them whenever I do. So that was a look at Monogram Revell now. So 1/48 scale First Lunar Landing kit on this 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. Until next time.